Okay. Well, welcome to everybody to the first of what we hope will be a series of interviews with some of our former players in association with the Southport Football Club Former Players Association. I'm delighted, seems to be having a bit of fun with his camera, but I'm delighted that starting off is Ian Baines, a member of the Southport Football Club 100 Club. Ian actually made 100 league starts and 45 games in various cup matches. Also here today is Dan Hayes, I don't know what we call you, Dan. I put the leader of the Southport Football Club's former players.
Yeah, that'll do.
Happy with that. Ian, thank you for joining us today. We've got a lot to talk about, but can we just have a look at your time at Southport Football Club? What were the highlights and what do you remember about your time with us?
Well, obviously the biggest highlight was winning the league. Was a big moment for me, especially at Emily. I really had a good rapport with the supporters. I felt I was more in touch with the supporters than the club, to be honest. I think the fan base that they had, or still have, was one of the best in non-league at that time, at my era. Especially for me at Emily away. It was a big highlight for me because I've still got a gold watch with 100 league appearances.
Right, yeah.
I've still got that. I've never worn it. It's still in the original box. And that was presented to me at Emily off the travelling away supporters. So to some people it might be minor, but to me it's a big thing to have a memento really off the supporters, because with this European Super League thing they were trying to do, and it was all fan based to trying to drive it out. I think some people sometimes forget, the supporters do mean a lot, and it did to me. Being at Southport was a big change from playing Sunday League football when I first got picked up. By time,
did you get picked up from Sunday League football, Ian? Is that how you came to play for Southport?
That's how I came to play for Southport. I played primary school. When I got to the seniors, I was always small. So for some reason, I was living in like the land of the giants. If you were tall, you seemed to get picked. If you were small, you seemed to get overlooked. But I always loved football. I always like everyone always said, I always kicked the ball from young and stuff. I didn't play much in senior school. As in football, I was more athletic. I was an all-round sportsman: cricket, running, the rugby side of it. Played house football, but never played the school senior level. Yeah. It was just, it just didn't appeal to me, to be honest. That's why I still run today. So,
who was it who brought you to Southport then? Which manager brought you to Southport? Can you remember?
Brian Griffiths.
Yeah.
He was with
Mick Jones' assistant, wasn't he?
Mick Jones. Was it Mike Jones' assistant?
Dave Jones.
Dave Jones. I was playing for where I live in Kirby. I played in the Kirby Newtown Premiership League. They call that the Premier League. I played for a football team called the Windmill, who were the top Kirby side at the time, and I was only in my late teens. And there was an ex-Everton fella, Dave Jones, and an ex-Liverpool manager, Tommy Smith.
All right, yeah.
Both watching the Premier League or the Premier League Cup in Liverpool, and we were playing a top side called the Canada, who were a very good side in Liverpool, and we beat them 1-0. I played right back that day, and I come off the pitch, and Tommy Smith and Dave Jones both approached, were talking to me. I knew who they was through their football career, but I didn't, at the time when they were talking to me, there was going to be an approach from either of them. One was at Carnarvon and Dave was scouting his stuff for Southport Football Club.
Mm-hmm.
So you only had 11 games with us in that first spell, Ian. What was the reason that you ended up leaving? You joined Kirby, did you, after that one, Kirby Town?
Yeah, I did the whole pre-season with Southport. With a left back called Robbie Armstrong. We both lived and grew up together around the corner from each other when we were kids, and we both grew up through the Sunday League football. We played together at the Windmill, and we both got approached. We both come up and did pre-season. Robbie got into a bit of trouble with a referee. Something went on, or something. I couldn't be precise on what happened. He got banned for a bit. I did the whole pre-season under Brian Griffiths, and I'd already arranged the year before to be married in September '87, and I did the pre-season. I told the club I was getting married on the 19th of September, which was a Saturday, and they had obviously the fixtures were obviously then were done, but because I was only playing Sunday League football, it didn't mean anything at that time. Brian Griffiths wasn't happy at all. Got fined 2 weeks' wages. I cancelled my honeymoon, and he took me to Barrow on a Tuesday night. I got married on a Saturday, missed the game, went to Barrow on the Tuesday, and he didn't pick me at all. I wasn't even in the squad.
He didn't take her with you to Barrow for the honeymoon then?
So I cancelled my honeymoon because I thoroughly enjoyed Southport Football Club's facilities and support. I think the supporters took to me right away.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember, from never being at a league club or on an apprenticeship anywhere, I was someone who loved football but just wanted to play football.
Yeah.
So when you left Southport after the first spell, then you went to Kirby, and you ended up having a pretty decent season with them. Then you played against Liverpool, didn't you, at Anfield for Kirby?
Yeah, we played. I played a good few handful of games for Kirby Town through manager Paul Hall and Peter Campbell, and we played Liverpool in the Senior Cup final at Anfield and won 4-2. It was then that I realised that if you knuckle down, I could try and make a career out of semi-professional. And not, I don't get me wrong, I loved the Sunday football because they were all my mates and stuff. I enjoyed playing at Kirby Town under Paul Hall because he made you 10 foot tall before you even went on the pitch. I got brought down at Anfield for a penalty by Steve Staunton because I was always athletic and fit and could run up, and I could run all day for some reason. And that was based in my school days of cross country running. Southport Football Club appointed Brian Kettle as a manager, and he played Kirby Town in a friendly, and I played for Kirby Town in that friendly. And straight after the game, Brian Kettle came over and said, "I'd like to bring you back to the club. I've already spoke to Paul Hall, and he's quite happy for you to go."
So that's how it came about that you came to Southport again.
And that's where I came back. I had when I first left the club, it was a dispute over how I played. How you had a fullback then called Joe Kelly, who was a good player. Joe, he was a really good player. He played for a Sunday League side called the Almathach or the Dingle down in the south, and they had a really great setup and a great side. And I've been brought in alongside him, and I played so many games. And then at Brian Griffiths' philosophy of football for me was knock it into the corners and turn the back forward and make everyone run. I like football for football as an attacking football. I mean, just didn't see eye to eye, and I just said to him, I can't believe I did get married, but it was already 18 months prior, and I did tell the club and stuff, and we never saw eye to eye. Dave Jones had left and gone to Stockport or somewhere, I think. He got a job in the Football League, and then I think things didn't work out for Brian at the club, and I played against him in a friendly, and then I was asked to come back.
Yeah, good. Your second spell obviously was very successful. You saw a lot of good times, and you talked about the championship game at Emily. That was a great day, wasn't it, Ian?
Yeah, the Southport. I have been back a few times because Liam Watson's still a really good friend of mine. I finished my playing career playing for Liam at Runcorn. I didn't stop playing non-league football till I was 40.
Did you play alongside Liam then with Runcorn? Yeah.
Yeah. I played with Liam. I've always played against Liam in non-league football.
You played with him at Marine as well, didn't you? And then he signed you at Runcorn.
He signed me. I stopped playing at 38 at Marine. And I played with Liam, and Liam was one of, when people ask me like forward wise or the hardest opposition player you played against, Liam Watson was my hardest player I've ever played against.
Really?
Yeah. As a striker, he'll laugh because you can show me. We always argued. We always wanted to kill each other, and he always winded me up to the point where I couldn't play football. We just wanted to kill each other. And he'd say, I've done my job now. I've put you off your game. And I was thinking, he has as well, hasn't he? But I'd stopped playing at 38, and he took over Runcorn, and he got in. I went to watch Dave Campbell, who's still a really good friend of mine, and Paul McNally, who played at Southport, centre half.
Yeah.
They went to Runcorn. I only went up to watch at Halton Rugby Club, Widnes Rugby Club, is it?
Yeah.
And then he'd asked me, could I help him out, Liam, with the kids, either in a capacity of coaching them or going watching games for them. Because my job then for Manweb, it's the old Manweb, which is now Scottish Power, was travelling from here to Scotland. So I had a really good job, company car, so I go and watch a couple of games and stuff. I went to watch them against Lancaster, Runcorn, with Liam being the manager, and I think a car broke down with 4 in, so they faxed me name through, and I played. I'd had no pre-season. I had someone else's boots on, shin pads, and he said to me after we played Lancaster away, and we beat them 1-0. And Liam said, I spent 2 years with Liam. As I said, he was the hardest opposition player because he was a cheat. Absolutely.
We'll love that when we put this out to know that he's the best player you played against. So,
he says you're a nice lad as well.
Yeah, absolute cheat on the field. He'd play. At the time with the officials, because of VAR now, you can't eat your sleeves offside. Liam would predominantly be offside, and we were both as quick as each other. And Liam was quick.
Yeah.
Liam was over 8 yards, was the quickest player I played against. And I was quick, but I knew I had to give him a yard so I could get that 8 yards.
Yeah.
But I'd always just get there with him to get the ball. But then he'd say something and it just wind me up. But he was, out of all the players I played with, as a forward player, wide person, there was second to none.
Would you say then you've enjoyed your time as a semi-pro footballer? Because you sort of at 18, 19, you carried on playing until you were around about the 40 mark?
40, yeah. 40. I stopped playing at Runcorn when I was 40. Liam, I'd been approached then by Southport to become the manager. And he did ask me to come along with him.
Yeah.
And I said, unfortunately, I couldn't, because I'd left under the cloud when I'd left after we'd won the league. And I'd never really had the chance to put that right. So I wouldn't like to go back with, you start off a new management career at the club and you bring in a bit of a sour note with you. So it wasn't really predominantly to play. He had Liam Worley, who was his assistant. And his lad played for Southport.
Yeah,
you had his son. His son played, Sean.
Yeah.
Sean was just a kid then, kicking the ball around on the pitch and stuff. It was just in the capacity of like the management now, they have a squad around them, don't they? And then the stuff. And I said, I unfortunately, I couldn't, because I'd left under the cloud. And so I never took up the opportunity. It come the end of the season, and then I hung the boots up type of thing then.
Your last game for us during that second spell was the Liverpool Senior Cup final then, wasn't it, against Burscough?
Against Burscough, again, I was substitute. I found like when I played and then I didn't play, I think I had a problem with being able to, for every game I played, that was my best game. So my next game had to be better. I put so much pressure on myself to perform. And I did that all through my career. My last game was my best game and my next game would be better. And that's how I played my non-league career. I enjoyed all the ups and I enjoyed all the downs, because every time at Southport was successful. They had a great squad of players. Paul Moore in goal, Alan MacDonald, Dave Fuller, Derek Gould, Kev Mooney, Mark Walmsley.
It was a special squad, wasn't it? An absolutely special squad.
Yeah, Dave Gamble, Chivs up front. I played in the past, before Southport became successful, with Davy Ayres, the winger, that Steve Holden, John Bishop. Do you remember John Bishop coming to the club?
Oh yeah, the most famous team photo in football with his big white teeth. Yeah.
Do you know what? I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here on your schedule, but John Bishop never spoke a word. Never spoke a word in his dressing room. Never, quiet. He was a pharmaceutical rep. I live where I still live now, right facing a medical centre, and every week he'd be sat outside ready to go in and sell his pharmaceutical stuff. He was quiet as a mouse, and now he's on the telly as a comedian. I mean, the biggest comedian ever meet in your life is Paul Moore, the goalie. He's the biggest character.
He was a character, funny. Wasn't he?
So funny. He went management with AFC Liverpool. He even asked me to come along with him, but I declined the opportunity. I had a really good job at Manweb at the time. So, as I say, Peter Withers, Mark Brennan, they had a team that never really had a crossword on the year that they won the league. I just think it all fell into place. The problem I felt like I had, because Kettle who brought me back, was that I could play in any position and I'd still perform.
Yeah.
So I'd struggle. I enjoyed my best time at Southport was when they always threw me up front, because I could run and I had ability and I always scored. But then it come the next game, if Chivs was out injured and I'd perform, and then Alan MacDonald was starting to play well at right back, I found that I'd become like too versatile and I could still do a job. I wasn't like a person, like a squad person, even though I ended up on my last season being a Kettle's squad person. But I still enjoyed it.
57 goals in 57 games in your final season with us in total. So you're still putting a shift.
It was good. I was just, as I say, that I had the highlights. We played Chorley in a cup final at Bolton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You came off the bench with Mark and both scored, didn't you?
I come on within. I come on. The story is with that is me and Mark were sub for various reasons. me and Mark were vocal. I've been at the club a long time, a good few years then, to be established, to be able to speak up, but in a positive way, because the positive way took me into man management or project management in my working career, and it was all positive. But because I felt like I had such a good rapport with the fans, it come to the point I felt like Brian Kettle would resent that in a roundabout way. And he was a lovely man and a lovely manager. But sometimes your disagreements was agree to disagree. And
yeah,
it got me, especially Mark. Mark was an aggressive type player, always put his foot in, never minced his words in the dressing room. But if I ever got into trouble on the pitch, then he'd be straight behind you. Same with Mark Schofield. I think Mark was brought in to rattle all our cages. We'd do pre-season and Mark Schofield would be knocking us all off the ball, kicking his lumps out of us, and we're all like wanting to kill him. I think, what's going on here? But it worked. The philosophy, what they brought in on that championship side, worked to a T. I don't think that they could ever better it. I don't think, to be honest.
If we rewind back from that a couple of years prior to the championship, you're one of the few people who've also had your brother play with you as part of the squad.
Stephen.
So Stephen, yeah. So when Stephen joined, you just got injured, and you talk about your rapport with the fans. But one of the things that sort of sticks in the memory for some of us is that at the end of that season that you got injured, according to all the notes in the programs at the time, the supporters actually clubbed together and helped pay for you to get some treatment, didn't they, for that injury?
It was, yeah. I'd had basically, because I was quick and sharp enough to mark, we played Sheffield United in pre-season friendly, and I thought I'd pulled my hamstring, which I didn't even know what a hamstring was at the time because it was like injury free, and it was a trapped nerve in my leg, but it was caused by a disc in my back. It protruded a little bit forward. Far too young to operate, but there was a treatment. I went to Blackburn to meet the people who look after your back, osteopath, and the fans and the all club together to pay for the treatment. So I travelled to Blackburn. I think it took about 3 or 4 months. I had to come out the team.
Yeah, that's right. Your first game back, your brother actually replaced you as a substitute in your first game back, and it wasn't until the start of that next season that you actually played together in the same team for the first time.
Yeah. Well, Stephen was a good player. He went on to have a successful non-league career. My younger brother, Stephen we were at Witten, at a game at Witten, and Stephen would come to watch me. His was faxed through at Witten, and he played. Again, I can't remember the exact what happened when, but I was playing with the top side then at the time. They had a really good setup and a really good squad. I can't remember what happened, but some players didn't show. Stevens was faxed through, and that was his first game for Southport. And he played fullback at the time then. As I say, the thing that was pushing on it was like a nerve, a disc pushing on a nerve. To have operation and stuff, then you couldn't do it.
So he left a year before you. Do you give him stick for the fact that you stuck around for the championship season and he wasn't there?
Yeah, we always have banter because he went on to play for Ashton and Atkinson Stanley, and we've still got a picture of us. It's got Brothers Grimm and a picture of me and him going up for the header. And there's not many. I think there's a few brothers who've come through the ranks there who've played for Southport. But no, we had a great side. Me, Stephen, Paul McNally and Davy Gamble would travel up together and stuff.
Well, let's talk about Gambo for a minute then. So if we skip forward to 2019, you did me the great honour of being the first person to speak at the Hall of Fame ceremony when we held it at the Grandstand Club. I asked you whether you'd induct your friend Gambo into the Hall of Fame. What was that like?
Oh, it was great because Gambo's a really good friend of mine. when he first come to the club, Brian Kettleman asked me would I look after him. He was, I think, I'm not sure how old he was, but he'd been at Grimsby and he'd been at clubs as a kid. Then he'd been at Altrincham, but he had a great left foot. And then we built up a friendship, and then I went to his wedding. I've been to his house. He's just, he took his vows last year before, and went back to his house. He's been to my house. We've been out, socialising, family and stuff. But when I got asked then, because he's such a good friend, and when I got diagnosed, as soon as he knew, he was straight to the house. When I had the operation, and then I was allowed visitors, he was straight round the house. I spoke to him this morning. I was out running this morning, and we still speak. I speak to a lot of the ex-players when I'm out running.
Can we move you forward to talk about the last couple of years then, Ian? It's been difficult, hasn't it? But you've come through it all. Do you want to talk us through what's actually happened?
As in with the prostate?
Yeah.
Because I've always looked after myself, especially when I played at Southport. When I played under, I played with Paul Lodge there, and I always treated my body. Yes, it was semi-professional football, but because the people were prepared to pay to come into the ground, I looked after myself. So I was really, I didn't drink. They call me the Shandy, get Baines here, Shandy. So I'd always looked after myself. And even when I played till 40, up till I got diagnosed, I'd run a marathon every year for charity. Because I'm married with 4 daughters, my daughters all did Morris dancing. So every year I'd run a marathon. I trained to run a marathon every year and raise money for funds for dresses, and I even put money towards buying a double-decker bus, which gets them to and fro. Because I was so fit and well, 16 months ago, as you do, as you're running, sometimes you get short-changed and you need a quick pee behind a bush. I passed blood in my water and I could see it. But I ignored it, thinking it was a sunny day, I was dehydrated, and I've got my watch on. I'm still competing again. I still compete. I still train every week as if I've got a big game on Saturday. And that's how I've always looked at it, looked after myself. But a week later, it happened again. I went to walk-in centre where I live in Kirby. Luckily, I met a lovely nurse on the desk, a triage nurse. She took a sample and said, could you come back on the Thursday and we'll take it from there. I went back on the Thursday and she said, I'm either going to phone you in an ambulance or you'll have to go to hospital. I've got you a letter written out here. You need to go to hospital straight away. Your blood count is high, but we don't know what it is. I went to Mazackley Hospital, and within a couple of weeks, within 7 days, I was transferred to Broad Green Cancer Urology Unit under 2 urology nurses, Michelle and Juliet, who are still good friends of mine now. And unfortunately, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. They wanted to do a biopsy. It took about 2 weeks, just a week before Christmas. Just before Christmas Eve, I'd had the biopsy. And then I was left then. It takes 7 days then to see how the results come back. So we had a quiet Christmas last year. But we'd heard COVID had come in. It hadn't really come in and got broadcast here. But while I was in hospital, it was allowed to be discussed in the hospital. So I was put in isolation. But because I didn't understand the COVID thing then at the time, the pandemic had broke out to be, everything was low key. So it took a bit longer then because of isolation. And people were going to get a bit skeptic of what was coming in. out of being diagnosed, they wanted to operate within a week. And when I thought about, God, that's quick, practically the surgeon was saying, we don't know how far it's spread. Now I know a lot more about it. At the time, I never had a clue. I wouldn't allow anyone to talk about it or Google it, because if you Google a cough now, you're dying, aren't you? So I'd had the biopsy, and then I walked into Broad Green, and unfortunately I was diagnosed. They said, you've got prostate cancer. We hope it's contained within the wall, but out of 29 biopsies, 27 have come back with cancer. But I wasn't carrying any weight. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I've never smoked. So it's a case of, hopefully, to God, everyone who watches the video did all go and get a PSA check. It's so easy to go to GP and demand a blood test, which I understand now. And it can tell you if you've got a high count or a low count, or what category you could be in.
So you've had the scare, but you've then gone on to raise money for charity from that, haven't you?
Yeah. Once I'd had an operation then in the new year, a big operation on a machine called the Da Vinci machine, which is like 7 arms go into your stomach and 1 up your belly button, and they take your prostate out that way. Unfortunately, I had complication with my waterworks and stuff. I needed another operation, but COVID by March had kicked in. So everything was cancelled, put on the back burner, even cancer and everything.
So that eventually happened October time, didn't it?
I had the October operation, October the 31st. I ended up with a double hernia, perforated membranes in your stomach that all the organs were trying to burst through, which caused me complications. And touch wood, today, everything's been an absolute success.
Brilliant.
I'd asked the oncologist in the month of March, could I do the prostate month of March? And I'd run and walk 10 miles a day. I'd said, I'd do 300 miles in a month. And I raised £3,000 for research.
Very good.
Yeah, I didn't do it for me. I still wear the top now. It's the top that I wear, that because you'd raised over £500. I use it now to training and running every day. So I still run every day. I've still run every day since back footballing. It's just something I took up.
What would be your message then? We haven't got long left Ian, on this, to be honest. So what would be your message to everybody? You know, you said have a test. Is that crucial to everybody, do you feel? That's
crucial to all men to go and have a test, because at the end of the day, watching your loved ones, watching you suffer, I'd rather people go and get a PSA test and the clear. It's a simple and easy test. But and there's a few people who've been on Twitter saying we've gone and got that. Some have been diagnosed, but they're at early stage. Some have had the all clear and have got a clear conscience and mind. But hopefully we've still got at least another 5-10 minutes, I hope. But I'd like to say to the supporters, the main reason, when we won the league, and I felt like I'd left under the clouds, and they'd helped me out to get me back playing again, that I never ever wanted to leave Southport Football Club. I wanted to stay for life. I enjoyed Southport when we'd play higher teams in the conference and the trophy, and I'd always raise my game, and I always felt in my own ability I could have played higher. But that wasn't to be, and I enjoyed my daytime job at Manweb. But when I got home after we'd won the league, I must have had about 15 calls from conference clubs, local Northwest clubs, and I asked every one of them, how did they get my number? Yeah, so we're coming like close to the end of the season. Contracts were up. Mine was up that year. Quite a few others. The club had mentioned going on. Obviously, then they were talking about in the summer contracts and obviously going up into the conference and stuff. And I felt like that was a level I wanted a player to see. It's testing yourself, isn't it? I'm somebody who always wanted to test his own ability. I took my football like in my working life. Always wanted to be better than the opposition, because I felt like at the time, look at the club, the stature of the club. It's still the same. It's a big club, and it's like a sleeping giant. And I think you've got the right man at the helm, Liam, to try and bring them forward. I mean, obviously the support now was a lot more now than it was then. As I say, we had various meetings, and then we'd had celebrations in the Prince of Wales hotels and stuff. And then I remember coming home, and within a space of 2 days, I'd had like 15 calls off clubs, and I'd asked them all, where'd you get my number from? And it was given out by the club. And I thought, why would you want to give me number out if you're saying you want me to stay? Do you know what I mean? So it didn't make sense. I knew the club and they were trying to offload me because my phone was ex-directory. I paid for it on the thing to be taken off. So I knew it was only either Brian Kettle or the second, or somebody would have given the number out. And then me and Kettle had choice words then, and it was time to move on. It then got out in the press that I'd signed for Marine, which was a big rival for Southport Football Club. It was a big rival for me because I bought into the coast, Southport Marine Coast thing. I was right into that. I was like one of the Port Army. I was like, you're singing along. It was a big thing because Southport was such, for me, playing at Southport was like playing for Liverpool for me. It was such a big thing because playing Sunday football, which you love with your mates, you went to Southport and you were paying you to go and play and watch people watching you playing. So I embraced that and took myself to another level. But I couldn't accept that the club would give you a number out. All I asked them was, you asked me to sign when I played against you. Just have the same respect if you want me to leave. And then I met Rowley Howard just by chance. There was nothing set up. I'd had no calls off Marine, none whatsoever. I could have gone up in the conference. And I was still good friends with the Orr family, Pedro Orr, who played at Southport many years ago. They were at Knowsley United then. They come from Kirby Town to Knowsley. And then I just met Rowley by chance. And he congratulated me on winning the league and was saying, what's your plans and all that? I said, I've decided to leave, and the club had decided for me to leave on their terms, but I'm not leaving on anyone's terms. And I remember saying to them I was heartbroken, and I'll be honest, I was, because I had such. It was like leaving your home type of thing, and I struggled. I did struggle, and I'll be honest, I am someone who wears my heart on my sleeve. But I loved the club. I took into it. I took into the behind the goal, the port. Me and my younger brother Stephen, we'd go to Southport overnight and stay in B&Bs, and we'd go out with the supporters. I can't remember the names of them now. I don't know if there's one called Jacko or supporters from the past. They're always behind the goal. And I had such a good relationship that me and my younger brother, we'd go and stay in Southport and go out with the fans.
So you became a proper Southport fan?
I became a fan of. I'd wore a shirt, but I was a fan, and that might make sense. But I understood how they felt. Do you know what I mean? Because there were times when I was there.
Yeah, probably explains how you were one of the first people to sign up for the Former Players Association as well. Then.
Yeah, because it's the same people. I've written, when you asked the question here, I've written some like little notes down for like the Chorley Cup final when me and Mark Brennan come on and we scored. Me and Mark Brennan got dropped for the final and we were sat as subs. I think Southport were winning 2-1 and 90th minute Stevie Joel comes running down the touchline because then you had to warm up behind the goal at Bolton Wanderers ground to saying you're going on in the 90th minute. And I was hurt, and so was Mark. And we got stripped, we had to get changed. And then Charlie scored in the 90-something injury time, didn't he?
Yeah.
So me and Mark Brennan, I'll be honest, me and Mark Brennan just walked on the pitch and said to Kettle, well, you'll have to make 2 subs now. And he had to. And within 5 minutes of me being on the pitch, I scored because he put me up front. And I knew they were tired. And I knew I still had a good fitness level. And I was in behind, scored. And I didn't celebrate with the fans. I remember running like to our own dugout, if to say. I've just, as you do. But I still had the respect.
Yeah.
And then I'd set up Mark Brennan's first goal. So, as I say, I've written a couple of notes of, as I say, you never meet a bigger character than Paul Moore. Jack Carr, president of the club. Always give a football if you score a hat-trick. I scored a hat-trick for Southport against Bearscow. I scored 4 actually. 1 with my left foot, 1 with my right, and 2 with my head. And I never got a ball. And I'm still disappointed I haven't got that ball. And a lovely couple called Jack and Vera Priest.
Oh, yeah.
And you had Hayden, the son, who was the club, he was the club secretary or club, he worked for the club.
Yeah, he had various roles at the club latterly, yeah.
Yeah. Jack and Vera, I used to go and visit a lot when my kids were kids. I used to write to them. We played Bearscow in the cup final at Goodison, and I got a big silver plaque. It's like a big silver tray. I got that engraved, and I went to Jack and Vera's in Southport where they live, and I presented to them, and I said, "That's for you."
Oh, lovely.
So they've still got that at home. My senior cup. It was like a big plaque. I got it engraved, presented to them, and they've still got it at home on the wall. So, as I say, it was a great time. I played with really some great players at Southport Football Club, and as I say, I played under some really good managers. But Liam Watson, when he took me to Runcorn, he educated me in football. His homework and his detail was second to none. And I played under Brian Kettle, who was successful. Played under Rolly Howard, who was successful. I went to Liam at 38, and we go to games and watch. And when you come back in the dressing room, everything was to detail. Mm. So he'd never missed a trick. And I think that's why he became successful at the club. And then he went to Telford, didn't he? And he brought a nothing club and won the league.
Yeah.
So I know how good he was, and he was such a good player. And we're still good friends. Even when we went to I did the presentation for Davy Gamble. That was an honour to even be asked by the club. I still feel like I still feel part of it.
Good.
Do you know what I mean? I still follow them, and whenever there's anything going on, I still try and get involved. I'd still love to get my boots on and come and play a game on there. That's not on my bucket list.
Maybe you can join us for walking football.
You'll have to join our walking football session, yeah.
Yeah, I believe I'm going next Wednesday.
Are you coming?
I'm coming on Wednesday because a good friend of mine, John Roach.
Right, yeah.
John Roach I play football with John Roach at Marine. I know it's the Southport website, but John Roach is such a close friend, and he's been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And
John's leading the team on the Wednesday. Our Southport team are playing the Parkinson's guys on Wednesday at the ground, so that'll be nice.
At the ground. Is it 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock?
11 till 12, yeah.
11. So he said he's asked me to come up, and I said I'd love to come up.
Brilliant.
So I'm going to come up and watch.
Bring your boots.
Yeah, I'm going to support John. To be honest.
No, you can go on the pitch.
Yeah, it's because he's such a lovely fella. Honestly, you never meet a more gentleman. Honest to God, he's such a. I wish he'd if he'd been at Southport. If Southport would have picked it, like, because I know Kettle liked him. He'd have been a great asset. He was a great asset. He was a great footballer. He was. But as you know, people
on that note, we've got quite a lot of material here, so I think we'll draw it to a close. But your time and these stories have been absolutely fantastic, and I think this is a fantastic start, Dan, don't you, to what we want to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an honor. Honestly, it is. It's something I could ever do in the future. If you get, I know, as I say, the club are great. Charlie Clapham, the chairman. I mean, you could spend all day talking about the club, and I mean, I could see, like, behind you. Like, I mean, it's come up tenfold again, hasn't it, since back then, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And hopefully to get back to the glory days again. But if there's anything in the future, I could even get involved. Or
when we're allowed back in the lounge, Ian, we'll get you in for a Legends in the Lounge session.
Yeah. So they will all. As I say, all the lads said to me yesterday, we can't remember. Yesterday, how can you remember anything? We were talking about Whitley Bay away because it was always cold, the wind, the rain. I got brought off in like the 88 minutes. I couldn't walk, feel my teeth, my hands were frozen, and so. But no, it was great. I couldn't fault it. The only disappointment was saying was leaving, and I never wanted to leave. And I felt like I'd let the hardcore of the supporters down who'd look after me, and I'd never ever got the chance. And maybe those that listen will understand that. If your number's given out, then it should never have been, and I think it was time to move then.